Hello everybody, welcome back to the Chunkiest Dudes. This is Jordan. Today I have an important weather update, as we will likely see some severe weather today and we could even see some tomorrow. Today is mainly across southeastern Texas and southern Louisiana, where we have a potential for a few tornadoes and scattered damaging wind gusts. We're also going to talk about Tropical Storm Melissa, which will soon become a hurricane and will rapidly intensify into a Category 4 hurricane before making landfall in Jamaica and Cuba, bringing some catastrophic impacts to those areas, as well as bringing some impacts to the Bahamas later next week. So anyways, let's get straight into this weather forecast. First of all, I'm going to talk about the severe weather threat for today, as we do have a slight risk of severe weather across southeastern Texas and southern Louisiana. We could see a few tornadoes later today and also some scattered damaging wind gusts, as we will have a semi-discrete storm mode. We have a potential for a strong tornado across southeastern Texas and southwestern Louisiana if the semi-discrete storms can take advantage of the environment. I wouldn't be surprised if they upgrade to a 10% tornado risk later today. I'm not sure if it would be hatch or non-hatch. And we also could see some large hail across portions of southeastern Texas. So anyways, let's get straight into the severe weather threat. First of all, looking at our severe weather outlook for today, you can see we obviously have a slight risk of severe weather across southeastern Texas and southern Louisiana. We also have a marginal risk across much of eastern to central Texas, across much of Louisiana, and even a sliver of southwestern Mississippi there. We also have a marginal risk of severe weather across the western coast of Oregon and the southwestern coast of Washington there, as well as southeastern Washington, northeastern Oregon, and northwestern Idaho, and we'll talk about that briefly as well. Firstly, looking at our tornado threat, we have a 5% tornado risk across southeastern Texas and southern Louisiana, where you could obviously see a few tornadoes later today, maybe even a strong tornado, and I'll talk about why we could see a strong tornado in a minute. And we also have a 2% tornado risk across more of southeastern Texas, more of southern Louisiana, and then parts of southwestern Mississippi. We also have a small 2% tornado risk across western Oregon and southwestern Washington there. And then our wind threat, basically 15% wind threat across southeastern Texas and southern Louisiana, and then our 5% wind risks are basically across our marginal risk areas there across the Pacific Northwest and also across eastern Texas, most of Louisiana there. And then a hail threat for today, a portion of southeastern Texas could see some scattered large hail, although hail shouldn't be a big threat today. Looking at our excessive rainfall outlook for today, we actually have a slight risk of excessive rainfall across eastern Texas, southern Arkansas, western and central Louisiana there, where you can see some scattered flash flooding, as we will have some storms maybe cover the same area a couple of times. I'm going to go back here and look at our day 2 outlook, as we can see some isolated severe weather tomorrow, mainly across southeastern Louisiana, southern Mississippi, southwestern Alabama, and the western Florida panhandle there. We do have a 2% tornado risk for tomorrow, where you can see an isolated tornado or two. We could also see some isolated damaging wind gusts of up to 65 miles an hour, and luckily no hail threat for tomorrow. Looking at our excessive rainfall outlook for tomorrow, we do have a marginal risk of excessive rainfall across southeastern Louisiana, western Florida panhandle, much of Alabama, much of Mississippi, western Tennessee, and northwestern Georgia, where you could see some isolated flash flooding tomorrow. Now we are going to look at our meso-analysis in Texas. We mainly want to look across southeastern Texas, as the storms have not been there for a few hours and it's starting to destabilize, and will continue to destabilize over the next few hours until storms start forming. So if we see, you can see we don't have very good conditions out there, but if we go a little further south here, you can see we have around 50 knots of shear out here. And we do have around 1,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram of CAPE in some of these areas. And those conditions will eventually spread into southeastern Texas over the next few hours as the storms continue to move away and the atmosphere is allowed to destabilize. Now we're going to look at some weather models. Here is the 12Z HRRR. You can see as those storms start forming around 20Z-ish, which is around 3 p.m. Central Time. Eventually, let's move it to southeastern Texas. This would likely be the time frame of our highest tornado threat here. We can see a few tornadoes from these semi-discrete supercells, and eventually it moves up into the east and weakens. Look at the 12Z wrap. You can see how it has these storms forming around a similar time frame here. Eventually they move east, and this is where our peak tornado threat would be. I know it's not as high resolution, it's hard to see, but you can kind of see the semi-discrete mode there. Now we're looking at the NAM. So you can see the storms start forming around 21Z, and eventually they move to the east and bring a tornado threat. And what I find interesting is it really has one semi-discrete supercell here that tracks like directly across the Houston metro there, which would be interesting to see if we just get one supercell or a few supercells out here. And then we have the NAM 3K, I believe this is. Basically, you can see our storm starting to form around 20Z there, and eventually we move to the east. This is where our peak tornado threat would be, before eventually this just becomes a linear mess and moves to the east. Now we are going to look at Tropical Storm Melissa, which will soon become a hurricane and will rapidly intensify over the next couple of days. While it moves towards Jamaica, Jamaica will see some catastrophic rainfall, some catastrophic flooding there. Eventually, the system will make landfall in Jamaica, bringing some catastrophic wind gusts to Jamaica. And then eventually it will move towards Cuba, make landfall in Cuba, bring some pretty significant impacts there. And eventually the Bahamas could even see some impacts. The system will likely be weaker, then Melissa will likely no longer even be a major hurricane, probably just a Category 2 hurricane at that point. So anyways, let's talk about Hurricane Melissa. Now looking at Tropical Storm Melissa, right now it is pretty much near hurricane strength. I wouldn't be surprised if the next update, if they upgrade to hurricane strength. We do have a couple recon missions in there right now, and we're flying aircraft in there to find the pressure and the wind speeds of the hurricane right now. Anyways, Melissa will rapidly intensify over the next few days, and then eventually make landfall in Jamaica and Cuba. Look at the latest forecast advisory right now. It has sustained winds of 60 knots or 70 miles an hour, wind gusts up to 75 knots or 85 miles an hour, and the pressure right now is 982 millibars, which is pretty low for a tropical storm. Normally it would be a hurricane, and I think soon it will be a hurricane. Anyways, by 12Z tomorrow is expected to be at 100 knots or 115 miles an hour. So in less than 24 hours, it'll intensify by around 45-50 miles an hour. And then you can see it peaks at 135 knots. I don't think it's going to peak as a Category 5 anymore. It doesn't have enough time in my opinion, but I think it'll still peak at around 155 miles an hour. And then you can see eventually it make landfall in Jamaica. It will likely be around 120, 115 knots or 140, 130 miles an hour. And then eventually it will weaken into a hurricane as it moves over Cuba and the Bahamas. Here is the satellite imagery for Melissa real quick. You can see it's starting to get organized. I wouldn't be surprised if this gets up to a grade 2A hurricane soon, because this is starting to look pretty organized, and we might see an ice start to form up in the next several hours. Now we're going to look at the wind speed probabilities. You can see Jamaica is going to see tropical storm force winds. There's a hurricane warning for Jamaica now, and your preparations need to be done by the end of today because you're going to see some pretty catastrophic flooding or some catastrophic wind gusts. And then southeastern Cuba mainly will see some tropical storm force winds, although just most of eastern Cuba will also see some tropical storm force winds. And then portions of the southern Bahamas and the Turks and Caicos Islands will also see some tropical storm force winds as well. Looking at our 50-knot wind speeds, Jamaica is the most likely location for those, although portions of southeastern Cuba and a sliver of the Bahamas could also see some 50-knot wind speeds. And then looking at our hurricane wind speeds, doesn't seem like anywhere is too likely right now, but these probabilities will go up. Jamaica will likely see some hurricane force winds, and then portions of southeastern Cuba will also see them. Not too sure about the Bahamas yet. And then we are going to look at our forecast cone. Here you can see right now is located relatively southeast of Jamaica-ish, and is expected to rapidly intensify over the next few days, as I said, before eventually making landfall in Jamaica, making landfall in Cuba there, could make landfall in part of the Bahamas, and eventually it's going to be moving quite fast. It's going to move hundreds of miles in one day, compared to right now it's moving not even like 100 miles in a day. And now we're going to look at our key messages here. As you can see, rainfall is going to be a big issue. Eastern Jamaica could see 20 to 30 inches of rain, and portions of southeastern Haiti or southwestern Haiti could see that too. And portions of southeastern Cuba could see 8 to 16 inches of rain. So this is going to be very bad for people in the path here. Looking at our ocean conditions out here, right now, where ocean heat content is pretty much the same, 150 to 175 out there, which is pretty good there. Look at our wind shear. The wind shear is lower now, and it seems that the wind shear is going to help Melissa strengthen, as it's going to help it gain more outflow, which leads to more strength in Melissa. And I think if we look at the shear tendency, the shear is actually going down, I believe. So the wind shear should actually be going down near Melissa, which is actually good for the system. We're going to look at some weather models now. Here's the HFSA. You can see right now it has around 60 knots. As we go on later in the day, you can see it has it becoming a hurricane later in the day. And you can see it has it rapidly intensifying before it peaks as likely a Category 4 hurricane for sustained winds of 150 miles an hour, which I would agree with. By the time it makes landfall in Jamaica, it has it being only a Category 3 hurricane. These models don't do well with land, so the hurricane will likely be stronger than that, but it's just because of land. And then you can see it continues to weaken as it moves over towards Cuba and over at Cuba. But you can see it strengthens a little bit as it moves over Bahamas, and eventually it will start moving quicker there as it moves through the Bahamas. Looking at the euro, you can see it's a little weaker than the rest of the models, but it still has a weak landfall in Jamaica for some reason, and then it just glitches as it moves through Cuba and the Bahamas. This is an unrealistic scenario as it is already at 60 knots. Looking at the Google DeepMind model, you can see this also has it rapidly intensifying over the next few days, before eventually gets a high Category 4 hurricane, and eventually moving off to the north here, remaining as a major hurricane for longer than the rest of the model. So anyways, that's all I have for this this video. Make sure you pay attention to the severe weather for today if you're in southeastern Texas or southern Louisiana, and if you're in Jamaica, you need to have your preparations done for Melissa today. And if you're in southeastern Cuba, you probably should have them done around tomorrow. And if you're in the Bahamas, I would also watch that. And if you know anyone in those areas, make sure to share this video with them so they can stay updated and tell them what's going to happen, because it's going to be catastrophic, especially for Jamaica and southeastern Cuba. Remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel so YouTube will push this video out to more people. And also don't forget to share this video with friends and family, especially those in the impacted areas, and also leave a comment down below about what you think about all this and any more things you would like me to talk about in future videos about Melissa. Anyways, goodbye.